Hey everybody, let's get back to business here. Let's talk about amplifiers. And specifically, I'm going to try to see what I can remember about the rectifiers. I know that's a big popular series of amplifiers from a while ago and still going on. It was part of what we called amongst ourselves, the Stylist Series. And the idea behind the Stylist Series was that, wow, the amplifier is really what determines the playing style, of course, along with the actual playing musical style. Because let's face it, almost everybody uses Gibsons or Fender guitars or an offshoot of one or the other. Um, and there is no other instrument that I can think of that can play in so many and such diverse musical styles as can guitar. So, with that in mind, we wanted to create amplifiers for each style that were totally devoted to that style, and in the performance musically, and in the looks, and in the feature set. One of the first ones was the Blue Angel that I mentioned earlier. Very simple, one channel, didn't even have a master on it. Straight ahead amplifier. The thing that we did, if you'll remember, I mentioned this on an earlier, we put in what we called progressive linkage, which meant that you could select the power tubes for it. It had two 6V6s and four EL84s, which you could run 2, 4, or 6. Yeah, it was a pretty successful amp. Number 2 coming up was the Maverick, which was not quite high gain, but it was a vintage piece, and it had its great devotees. Then along the way, we have a friend down in L.A., Andy Brower, and he used to have a company called Andy Brower Studio Rental Services. And he had some Boogs down there, including one that I built for Robin Ford. He was a great guy, and he told us at one time, he said, hey, the trend has changed. It's the big hair, big stage, big rock, and it's about big amps. And so what we're doing here is not your little friendly Mesa Boogie sidekick, even though we all know that's 100 watts, and it's a wolf in sheep's clothing. Guys want to go, they want a big, impressive, kind of like scary looking, intimidating looking back line and sounding. And so I got a couple of these modified Marshalls that you ought to listen to. So Doug West was down, that's Tone Boy, Tone Adult. He was down recording for his band, the Freaky Executives. And if I recall correctly, he just drove up with, I don't know, 3 or 4, 2 or 3, a few of these modified Marshalls. And Andy had said, man, just listen to these and do your thing, because you can spin this way out. These are just mods on Marshalls. Well, that's exactly what we did. And we had a whole bunch of different ideas to do this. So I'm going to jump ahead to what we did was we took the one that we liked the best and built it up with a bunch of our changes, which included the idea of dual rectifiers. And that's where the name came from, of course, and that is it had solid state rectifiers switchable to vacuum tube rectifiers. And of course, that really changes the dynamic characteristic of the amplifier. Here's why. Tubes sag, they have resistance, tube rectifiers. So the more current being drawn through them, the more the voltage sags as the resistance internally makes itself evident. Silicon rectifiers, on the other hand, are stiff. They don't sag. They have a standard mere half a volt drop, and it doesn't matter how much current is going on. It always stays. So a guy playing, oh, that's friendly and responsive. That has give and juice. And then you switch the rectifier. Oh, shit, that has punch. That is lethal. That just really changed everything. So, we liked that idea. I remember coming up with that. And then I wrote a patent for it and I went, I don't know if they'll ever, maybe they'll approve that, maybe they won't, I don't know, but it's an easy one to write. So I wrote it up and my God, I got approved instantly. I couldn't believe it because usually there's all this kickback from the patent examiner. You can't do it because this has already been done. That's already, it's like whatever. Here, it was really simple and it was really clear. And almost everybody copied it. And so it turned out that one of the easiest patents turned out to be one of the most valuable ones. Because not only did so many companies copy the feature, but even in the modeling, which was just coming up with a Line 6 pod, they even copied the name Rectifier on that. And when we looked around at, because we were trying to decide, well, should we make an issue of this? And of course, if you don't protect your intellectual property, it's equivalent to donating it to the public domain. So you have to. And we did. And I must give credit to the Line 6 company because they folded right away and said, okay, yeah. And they paid a major six-figure settlement to make it go away. I'm kind of getting off the track here, and that's what happens when I start thinking about and remembering all of this stuff. I thought this was interesting, as you know, if you've been watching most of these, that the legal aspect is kind of interesting to me, partly because I wrote the patents. And we go back to that first one that talked about high gain and channel switching. Now, that wasn't evolutionary. That was revolutionary. That kind of changed everything. So now let me get back to the topic of how the rectifiers evolved. Because again, we started with these amplifiers that used high gain, which came from us. But we wanted to take it a lot further because I can't even remember, I don't recall that these were capable of like dual mode, like being switched to an alternate clean sound. I don't think they were. And we needed that because we always thought the clean sound was one of those major stylistic voices that guitar can produce. And that, you know, yes, this was, we didn't realize, going to become such an icon in the heavy and metal world. We just thought it was badass, but it didn't have to be unleashed to just, you know, ungodly heavy metal zones. So what did we do? Clean sound. And the first versions of it, the clean sound wasn't good enough. And we thought, well, that's better than most people's clean sounds. And then a couple of comments said, yeah, but your Boogie, you got to have a great clean sound. So I don't know how few of those there were. Then we went back to work on it and made it a much, much better clean sound. That was part of our evolution of it. Now, what else did we do? Once we got a better clean sound, as I recall, we had the orange mode, which was channel 1, and the green channel, the red channel, which was channel 2. And then we thought, well, wouldn't it be nice if you could clone those because maybe you want two of the same basic performance channels. So we added channel cloning, which I thought was a fairly unique idea. And then we added another mode called modern because, again, I can't leave stuff alone. And, you know, I've got these theories about negative feedback. And in a nutshell, what modern does is it removes the negative feedback and it unleashes the power amplifier, and it just makes the thing more forward, gainier, and just more lethal, more barbaric, and just more crushing. And so, yeah, well, why not? Why not indeed? So I know there was the comments about, oh, you ripped off Soldano. Yeah, in a way we did, in a way we didn't. Yeah, Mike, you had a great circuit there. The first couple of tubes are like the Soldano ones. And I want to give him credit. You know, we all stand on shoulders of people that came before. We all actually stand on Fender's shoulders because they came up with this concept, the basic amp concept, particularly, and here's a very crucial point that I've made before, I'm going to make it again, tone control location. The tone stack on the early Tweed amplifiers of Fender, like the 410 Bassman and the twin, not the twin reverb, the twin amp, the tone controls were located at the end of the preamp. Now, when you add high gain to the preamp, as I did on those early Mark I's and as Mike Soldano did on his modified Marshalls, having the tone controls at the end of the circuit is crucial because that allows you to EQ the actual distorted signal. Now go back to contrast that with the blackface stuff, which is where all of the Mark amps are based from. The tone controls are after the first stage, so they're up near the front end. And yeah, they have a certain range of effect, but they're not able to actually EQ the distortion overdrive gain sounds because they come too early. One of the big reasons why the 5-band graphic equalizer was added all the way back to the first Mark I's, recognizing this, that if you have a huge overdriven signal, it's of enormous value to be able to EQ it with some kind of tone control circuitry after that distortion. Now, the Rectos did not need a 5-band EQ because, again, as in the Tweed amps, as in the Marshalls, which, for your reminder here, the greatest Marshalls, the 1959 and all of the ones that got Marshall on the map, they are basic part-for-part copies of the great Fender 410 Bassman circuit, with the exception that they're more powerful. They have EL34s. Now, 34 power tubes drive harder with a lower signal level than do 6L6s. So the mere fact that they had EL34s made the amp seem gainier. Well, they actually were gainier because of the increased tube sensitivity of EL34s. Now, that was one of these happy accidents. The reality was the 6L6s, due to the patent on their construction called beam power pentode, made them quite expensive in Europe. And the EL34, I think it was Mullard invented it. One of the great British or European companies invented that as a hi-fi alternate. And so that's what was used in the Marshalls and in the Marshall amps. That once again, everybody stands on the shoulders of what came before. So when we got this up to the point where it was actually sounding really freaking great, I said, yeah, but I want to go in. I don't feel comfortable. I want to change a bunch of this stuff so it's not the same as Mike Soldano's input stages here. And everybody said, no, don't touch it. Don't touch it. I said, no, I can do it. So I was up against everybody saying, no, you can't. It's perfect. You got to leave it where it sounds totally different, which it does. It does not sound like a Soldano. So, okay, all right. So I buckled under that. And again, Mike, thanks. Now, it became a success far beyond what we thought it would. But again, part of that is because, number one, I had built this big factory starting from a muddy cow pasture in Petaluma. Number two, I had traveled the world many times setting up distribution all through Asia and all through Europe. So there was a willing market there. And another thing that happened, we had a pal back in New York, a guy named Mark Snyder, great guy. And we were talking about having a Boogie store in New York, and he was going to run it. But this idea came at the same time because we had the Boogie store in Hollywood, which again we had taken over from one of our biggest dealer friends who had basically gone bankrupt there. Partly because of the ADA, the Americans with Disabilities Act. Some activist said, I can't come in the front door because there's a step here. And he said, there's no problem. We got a side door that you can wheelchair right. I'm not going to a side door. And so he sued him. It was a fucking nightmare. At any rate, so the Hollywood store was doing pretty good for us. And we thought, well, yeah, let's have a company store. So Mark Snyder was going to head that up. That meantime, we had launched the first dual rectifiers, and man, Mark was candying those things around the East Coast like nobody's business, and everybody had heard it, wanted one. They got a fabulous review in Guitar World. I mean, I do remember the guy ends with, "I wish you could all plug into this page and hear it because it's that good." And again, here's another thing about that Stylist series. I said, man, like I said earlier, it's got to look the part too. So I thought, man, there's nothing tougher than that diamond plate, material. And it is available in polished aluminum. So it looks really good. And if you look at the metal work on those amplifiers, it's really spun out. I'm really proud of it because it's artistic in expressing what that amp should be. Look at the vent on the top. That is really expensive stuff to do. And now that they're doing Gibson, Mesa Boogie through Gibson's ownership is reissuing it, they're coming up with, wow, this shit is expensive because, of course, the price of everything's gone up. They deviated from what we did. We had the chrome chassis as an option to get it chromed. And I think in our day, our cost was $50 or $60 to get the chrome. Nowadays, it's $400 is what they told me is the price of chroming. So once again, why did they choose to put it out only in chrome? I don't know, but I don't work there anymore. I would advise them that we had it right. If somebody wants to pay for the chrome, it's available as an option. But man, it's already expensive enough because, again, you look at most amps, they've got this standard plastic molded grill for a vent on the top, and we've got these amazing pieces of metal where it's painted to get paint inside all of the vent holes, and then the thing is grained. That means it's run through basically a power sander so that it's bare metal on the top but painted on the inside, and then there is a painted mounting ring that goes around that to secure it. The front panel is similar. It's got the diamond plate, but with the diamond plate cut out and a cool insert of vented grill material, the same kind of stuff painted so that the insides of the vent slots are painted, but the front surface is bare. And then, of course, our original Mesa Engineering logo, got one right here. And I'll never forget laying this out on the kitchen table. And the look I was going for, you remember Dragnet? Dun, da, da, dun, dun, da, 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 flat five. Well, it ends with this big sweaty hand and a hammer, and the guy goes, kabang! And he puts in, this was a Mark, I think a 7 production or Mark 5 production or something like that. And I said, ooh, that's some heavy duty shit. So I wanted our Mesa Engineering logo to look like it had that big kabang. It was hammered into granite look or metal. And of course, here's where the identity changes. Boogie, it goes back to Santana. It was like, shit, man, that little amp really boogies. That's fun. That's partying. No, Mesa Engineering. Now, again, we want a little of the intimidation factor here. So, again, guys go and they pay big money to go to a big show and they see this wall of amps. Well, whether it's Marshalls or it soon became dual rectifiers, they go, oh shit, Fred, we're going to get our asses kicked now. Oh, look at that. Oh my God. Yeah, it's part of the thrill of going to a live show. So, yeah, and there were so many offshoots of the rectifier, not including the triple rectifier. I thought, hey, if 4 6L6s is cool on it, let's try 6 6L6s. And it takes 2 5U4 tube rectifiers to handle the current requirements of 4 6L6s. So let's put a third 5U4, so there's 3 of them in parallel to give you the rectifier capability to drive 6 6L6s. So there's 9 big pieces of glass. You want to shovel some glass? Look in the back of a triple rectifier again. excess is barely sufficient. You know, that was kind of the thinking here. And I like that. Excess is barely adequate. and that was part of that what is it, the modern mode, because you think the thing is pretty brutal already, and then you turn it into modern. Holy shit. So what else was on it? An effects loop. That was something that we more or less pioneered, that wasn't on the modified Marshalls that we were looking at. Another thing, and again, I got to tip the hat to Mr. Van Halen, Eddie Van Halen, because hanging out with him, what I learned, and he did love the 2C plus. You know, he had one of those, and he you know, wasn't exactly what he was playing. He was playing, you know, he had his classic Brown sound with the one magic Marshall on a Variac, and where he told everybody that he turned it up to 130 volts, the reality is he turned it down to about 94 volts. I'm talking about the power. Instead of being 120 coming out of the wall socket, he turned it down for the Brown sound. And that, again, that made it clip more, made it drive harder, drive, how do I put it? It made it saturate easier because all the voltages are lower on the thing. So we built in, what do we call that? Variac or Tweed? I can't remember, but it was the equivalent of that. So we had these, and again, I got a patent on that as a custom. All our transformers are custom, but this was a power transformer where if you had this much winding for the primary for 120 volts, we added more to it. So that it sagged, and the whole voltage was lower on the thing. So it was around 94 volts. It was like a 17% voltage reduction. Got a patent on that one too. So there were a lot of ways to set it. In fact, as I recall, you could even, and I don't know if this came out first or earlier, you could have one channel have the tube rectifier, the other channel have the silicon diodes, the solid state rectifiers. Because again, it totally changed the character of the sound, and it totally changed the character of the feeling. I remember a friend of ours, a guy that worked at the Hollywood store, Brian Swerdferger. He's been around the MI industry, the guitar thing, for his whole life. And I remember watching him and say, "Hey, Brian, what do you think of this amp?" And where he's starting out playing it in the tube version, he's going, "Oh man, I like this. This is really juicy. Oh man, this is giving me a lot of tactile feedback." And then without telling him what was happening, I switched it to solid state, and he goes, he gets this look like, holy shit, what was that? and he just starts playing way aggressive. And it was interesting. Well, that kind of validated this idea, the dual rectifier. Okay, there was only one company that didn't fold on the patent infringement. And you know, that was all of my thing. Hey, I hate paying lawyers. Nobody wants to pay a freaking lawyer. Life's too short. We're all in this business to, you know, have fun and hopefully make a decent living. No, you should have never gotten that patent. That's just a switch. That's just a switch. And I said, oh, it is? Well, you show me an amplifier that has two different rectifiers. You show me any amplifier with two rectifiers, much less two that are different, one being tube and one being... That still didn't work. Fender caved right away on that, said, okay, you're right, we ripped you off. And that's water under the bridge. And again, I said, hey, just stop making them that way. And I even told people, I said, look, you can just go get a plug-in from Groove Tubes that's basically plugs in instead of a vacuum tube. So you can do the same thing. You just can't have two of them built into one amp with a switch. Okay, so then I probably, as always, you know, here's why I do follow-ups, like on the racing, because I forget half of the shit, and I go, oh yeah, well, I should have mentioned this, I should have mentioned that. So let me see, I made a couple of notes here. The Trem-O-Verb, I mean, I'm talking about some of the offshoots. So there was, started with a dual rectifier, and again, it was wrapped in leather. It was chrome, or actually polished aluminum and chrome bits and black leather. There was reconstituted leather, and we made thousands like that. Then it turned out we couldn't get that anymore. And now what I've heard is that some of that, the leather being basically organic material, it hasn't withstood the test of time quite as well as the vinyl did. But yeah, we just thought, hey, shit, we're not fooling around. This is the Stylist Series, so we're talking about black leather and chrome. Comes with some handcuffs and a riding crop, you know. Just kidding. But maybe you get the idea. So the dual, the triple, and the single. And the single never really got the attention that it should have. Again, can you make a less expensive one? I mean, that's all we hear. Can you make a less expensive one? But you know, there were some people that got the single and they liked it, but it didn't really sell much. Okay. Maybe I covered enough here. I'm sure, again, that I probably forgot several things, and hopefully you guys, with your comments that I love seeing, will remind me. Hey, I got one and it's got this. What's the story behind that? And your question, what about this? What about that? The Trem-O-Verb, that was fun. Let's add reverb and tremolo to the basic dual rectifier. Now, most of those were combos, 212 combos, and man, that lit up the Seattle grunge style. Man, that was the amp to have. And again, it's not easy. I mean, I learned later on a better way to add reverb and tremolo and stuff while not spoiling the inherent character of the amplifier. And I don't think we did spoil it. That is on the Trem-O-Verbs. You got to like that name too. So if you're still with me this far, thank you. And I look forward to reading your comments and answering them. Take care now. Talk to you soon. Bye.